Years from now, people will still talk about the moment Barack Obama faced Donald Trump in his own office and left him speechless. The air inside the White House that morning felt different, heavier, still. It wasn't the kind of silence that brings peace. It was the kind that makes your chest tighten. Security guards stood taller, staff whispered quietly in the corners, and every step that echoed down the marble hall seemed to carry a message. Something important is about to happen. Inside the Oval Office, the president's chair faced the window, sunlight streaming over its polished surface. Donald Trump sat there, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the door. He had called for this meeting himself. The purpose, at least on paper, was a discussion on national matters, a serious conversation about policy, direction, and unity. But everyone knew that wasn't the full story. This meeting had a shadow behind it because the man walking into that office was Barack Obama. The one person who had publicly humiliated Trump years ago with nothing more than a few jokes and an unshakable smile. Now Trump had the power, the title, and the room. And for a man like him, that meant one thing. It was time to settle the score. The large clock on the wall ticked once, then again, its sound echoing like a heartbeat. Tick, tick. The doors opened. Barack Obama stepped in, calm, measured. The same slow, confident walk that had once filled stadiums with applause now carried him across a room charged with tension. He wore his usual half-smile, not forced, not fake, just polite. The kind that says, "I see what's happening here, but I won't let it shake me." Trump stood up, extending his hand. "Barack," he said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mr. President," Obama replied, shaking his hand firmly. His tone was respectful, but his posture spoke volumes. This wasn't submission, and it definitely wasn't fear. For a brief moment, the two men looked at each other. The room went still again. If you could bottle tension, that moment could have powered the entire White House. Staff members positioned themselves quietly along the walls, avoiding eye contact, pretending to be invisible. No one dared breathe too loud. Trump gestured to the chair across from him. "Have a seat," he said. Obama nodded and sat down. A folder lay in front of him. Neat, organized, color-coded tabs marking topics like economic reforms, foreign policy, and education. He had come prepared to talk about the country's future, but Trump had something else in mind. The small talk didn't last long. "How's Michelle?" Trump asked casually. "She's doing well," Obama said with his usual even tone, still inspiring people everywhere she goes. Trump nodded, leaning back in his chair. "That's good. That's good." There was a pause, the kind that drags on a little too long. Then came the smirk. And just like that, the real conversation began. "You know," Trump said, his voice dripping with forced charm, "I still get letters about your birth certificate. People really wonder about that, don't they?" The room froze. Every staffer's eyes darted to Obama. There it was, the move everyone feared or expected. Trump had brought back the one topic that had started it all, the false birther conspiracy, the claim that Obama wasn't born in the United States. Obama didn't blink, not once. He simply sat there, his fingers interlaced, expression calm. His eyes met Trump's, not with anger, but with quiet certainty. The silence stretched. Trump's grin widened as if waiting for a reaction. But Obama just leaned back, exhaled softly, and said, "You're still on that?" That simple line cut sharper than any insult. Trump chuckled, pretending not to be fazed. "Hey, I'm just saying what people are saying. You know how it is. I hear things." Obama nodded slowly, then reached into his folder. He slid a neatly folded document across the table. His birth certificate, the same one released years ago. "There it is again," he said lightly. "You can check it as many times as you need to. The paper hasn't changed." Trump's smile flickered for a split second. It was small but noticeable, like a crack in the mask. The silence returned. The ticking clock seemed louder now. Tick, tick, tick. Obama didn't say another word. He just sat there composed. The tension now belonged to Trump. For the first time since the meeting began, he looked unsettled. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, then forced another grin. "Well," he said, "I guess that settles it then." Obama's voice stayed calm. "It's been settled for years, Donald." That tone, calm, steady, certain, had a power all its own. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, but it carried something stronger than either. Control. Trump shifted in his chair. The energy in the room had shifted too. What was supposed to be a show of dominance was starting to look like something else entirely. A man trying to win a game that the other refused to play. For a moment, no one spoke. Outside the Oval Office, the wind rustled the American flag. Inside, the silence felt heavier than ever. Obama looked around the room at the paintings of past presidents, the stacks of briefing papers, the clock still ticking. Then he looked back at Trump and said quietly, "So, are we ready to discuss the nation's future?" Trump hesitated. His confidence flickered again, replaced by something uncertain. He hadn't expected this kind of calm resistance. He hadn't expected Obama to walk in and hold the room without raising his voice once. That was the thing about Obama. He didn't need to shout to be heard. His calmness was the power. And as the clock struck the next minute, everyone in that room knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a meeting anymore. This was a chess match between two very different kinds of strength. And the next move was about to change everything. The moment Barack Obama settled into his chair, the atmosphere inside the Oval Office shifted again. Gone was the polite stiffness of formal greetings. Now there was only tension, thick, invisible, pressing down on everyone in the room. Trump leaned back, his fingers tapping lightly on the armrest, eyes locked on Obama like a man studying an opponent before making his first strike. He smiled. That slow, confident grin people had seen 1,000 times before. The one that usually came right before something controversial. Obama noticed it too. He'd seen that look before years ago on television screens and debate stages. He knew something was coming. For a brief moment, Trump tried small talk. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said, glancing toward the window. Obama nodded politely. "It is." But Trump wasn't really talking about the weather. His tone had a sharp edge, like he was warming up for something. Then, without warning, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His smile vanished. "So, tell me, Barack," he began, his voice suddenly serious, "are we sure you were even born here?" The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Every sound seemed to vanish. Even the faint hum of the air conditioner disappeared behind those 7 words. Across the room, an aide stopped writing. Another looked down at the floor. Obama didn't move, not even a twitch. Trump kept going, sensing the silence. "You know, a lot of people still wonder about that. I mean, there are questions. People come to me all the time and they say, 'Mr. President, are we really sure about Obama?'" He chuckled softly, pretending it was casual, but there was nothing casual about it. This was Trump's first real move, and everyone in the room knew it. He wasn't asking, he was provoking. Years earlier, that very rumor, the false birther theory, had fueled Trump's rise into political headlines. It claimed Obama wasn't born in the United States, that he wasn't truly American. Even after it had been proven false, even after the documents were shown, some still repeated it. And Trump had been one of the loudest voices behind it. Now, with Obama sitting just a few feet away, he was bringing it back right to his face. Obama finally looked up, his expression unreadable, his eyes steady, calm, and piercing. "Still on that," he said softly. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Calm, controlled. But the weight of those 3 words filled the room. Trump blinked, caught slightly off guard by how relaxed Obama seemed. He leaned back again, spreading his arms. "Hey, I'm just saying what people are saying. I hear things. You know, people talk. They always talk." Obama didn't respond immediately. He took a quiet breath and opened the folder he brought. Inside were papers, charts, and notes, but one document stood out. He pulled it out slowly, unfolded it, and placed it on the table between them. His birth certificate. It wasn't for show. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to raise its voice. There it is, Obama said evenly. Signed, sealed, verified. You can read it again if you like. Trump stared at it for a few seconds, saying nothing, then a short laugh. Well, I guess that clears it up. Maybe. He said it playfully, but his voice carried an edge, a tiny crack of irritation. Obama smiled faintly. There's no maybe, Donald. There never was. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The silence was deafening. Everyone in the room could feel the tension. Two men sitting across from each other, both used to being the center of attention, both determined not to back down. Trump picked up a pen and tapped it against the table. You know, he said slowly, some presidents spend a lot of time talking. I like to get things done. Big difference. There it was, the next punch. A disguised insult. Obama's lips curved into the faintest smile. Doing things, he replied quietly, is doing the right things. That's the hard part. The tone was polite, but the meaning hit like lightning. Trump stopped tapping the pen. The sound of it clattering softly onto the desk was the only noise in the room. For a few seconds, time felt frozen. Even the Secret Service agents standing outside the door seemed to sense the tension radiating through the walls. Trump broke the silence first. Well, he said, forcing a laugh, you always were good with words. Obama didn't answer. He just looked at him calm, measured, steady. It wasn't arrogance, it was control. That's what unsettled Trump the most. He had expected fire, anger, maybe even a heated argument. Instead, he got calmness, confidence, silence that said, "You can't shake me." It threw him off balance. Trump leaned forward again, trying to take back control of the moment. You know, Barack, when I think about my presidency and yours, I realize we had very different styles. I like to be bold, you like speeches. Obama looked up. Maybe, he said with a quiet shrug, but words can build bridges or burn them. You choose which ones to build. Another silence. This one longer, heavier. Trump shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable. It was clear now his opening move had failed. The man he tried to humiliate hadn't taken the bait. Instead, Obama had turned the attack into a mirror, one Trump wasn't ready to look into. And deep down, Trump knew the meeting wasn't going to go the way he planned. Because in that moment, Barack Obama wasn't just defending himself. He was reminding everyone in the room. And maybe Trump himself, that power doesn't come from shouting the loudest. It comes from standing your ground without losing your calm. The battle of words wasn't over, but the first round that clearly belonged to Obama. The air in the Oval Office felt heavier now. Trump had thrown his best punches, but none of them landed the way he expected. Obama sat quietly, fingers resting on the table, his calm gaze steady as ever. That calmness was starting to get under Trump's skin. He cleared his throat and shifted in his chair, searching for another line, another jab that might break the silence. But before he could speak again, Obama leaned forward slightly. The move was small, almost casual, but the timing was perfect. Donald, he said in a low, measured tone, you and Ivanka have a son, right? The question sliced through the quiet like a blade. Every eye in the room lifted at once. Even the aides standing near the wall looked up, confused. Trump froze. For the first time since the meeting began, the confidence on his face flickered. What's that supposed to mean? He asked sharply. Obama didn't rush to answer. He let the silence work for him the way only someone truly in control can. Then he said slowly, "It means before you question my background, maybe think about what kind of example you're setting for yours." Trump blinked, caught off guard. He had come prepared to fight about documents and politics, not family. The shift threw him off balance. He forced a short laugh. "Barack, we're not here to talk about family. Let's stay professional." But Obama didn't smile. "Professional," he repeated softly. "That's interesting because professionalism starts with respect, something you keep forgetting." The words hung in the air. Obama's tone was calm, but there was weight behind it, a quiet authority that needed no volume. Trump leaned back, trying to recover his rhythm. "You're twisting this around," he snapped. But Obama shook his head. "No, I'm just reminding you that leadership isn't about insults and conspiracies. It's about truth. And I've got the truth written down. Every word, every record, every fact." Trump narrowed his eyes. "You're threatening me now?" Obama met his gaze. "I'm giving you a choice. You can keep twisting things, or you can stop before this gets embarrassing for you." The room went dead silent again. No one dared to move. One of the staffers standing near the door glanced at the floor, pretending not to hear. Trump's breathing grew heavier. He tried to laugh again, but it came out strained. "Embarrassing for me. Please." Obama simply leaned back, hands clasped. "You're the one bringing up rumors that died years ago, but if we're reopening old stories, I can bring some of yours too." Trump's face read, "You wouldn't." Obama tilted his head slightly. "Try me." For a moment, Trump seemed ready to explode. His voice rose, echoing through the room. "You're out of line. You don't come into my office." But Obama's calm voice cut through his anger like a cool wave over fire. "I'm in this office because I earned it once, and I'm here today because I was invited." That sentence landed harder than any shout could. Trump's words faltered. The anger drained from his voice, replaced by something quieter. Defense. "You think you're better than me?" he asked. Obama looked at him for a long moment, then said, "No, I think I understand something you still don't." Trump frowned. "And what's that supposed to be?" "That power isn't about proving you're right," Obama said. "It's about knowing when to stop proving anything at all." The quiet that followed was almost painful. Even the ticking of the clock sounded louder, echoing through the Oval Office like footsteps in an empty hallway. Obama's words had shifted the energy completely. He wasn't arguing anymore. He was teaching, and that made Trump look smaller. Trump reached for his glass of water, but his hand trembled slightly as he lifted it. He took a sip, trying to hide it. Obama continued, his tone never rising. "When you lead with anger, you lose control. When you lead with truth, you never have to raise your voice." Trump set the glass down with a sharp click. "Don't lecture me, Barack." "I'm not," Obama said. "I'm reminding you." Then for the first time, he leaned back with a hint of a smile. Not smug, but sure. "Remember, Donald," he said quietly, "you're not the only one who keeps records. I have documents too. If I ever need to prove a point, I won't need rumors or noise. I'll use facts and they'll speak louder than any tweet or headline." The last word landed heavy. Trump's jaw tightened. He didn't like being warned, especially not like this. But what could he say? Every time he tried to twist the moment, Obama brought it back to calm truth. Every insult bounced off him like rain on glass. It was clear now Trump had wanted a fight. Obama had given him something worse, a mirror. And what Trump saw in that mirror wasn't strength. It was insecurity, pride, and fear that someone else could steal the spotlight with nothing more than composure. A silence lingered again, stretching into seconds that felt like minutes. Finally, Trump looked away, pretending to glance at a stack of folders on his desk. He mumbled something about getting back to real business, but his voice had lost its fire. Obama nodded politely. "Sure," he said. "Let's talk about real business, the kind that helps the country, not egos." Trump didn't respond. He only straightened his papers, eyes fixed anywhere but on the man sitting across from him. And in that moment, the power in the room shifted completely. Obama didn't have to win with numbers or arguments or titles. He had won by staying calm while the other man fell apart. That was the real counterattack. Not shouting, not threats, just quiet control. The kind that makes everyone else realize who's truly in charge. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Trump had started the meeting thinking he could humiliate Barack Obama. Instead, he was the one now struggling to keep his composure. And as the clock ticked on, the air in the room told the truth before anyone said a word. Round 2 belonged to Obama. The Oval Office was thick with silence. Not the calm kind, but the kind that wraps around you heavy and uneasy. Trump sat stiff in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes darting toward the floor for just a second before snapping back up. Obama hadn't moved an inch. He was still sitting there composed, confident, almost too calm for the tension in the air. That calmness was unnerving. It wasn't arrogance. It was control. And that control made Trump furious. He tried to regain his footing. "You think you can come here and talk down to me?" he said, his voice cracking just slightly. "I'm the president now." Obama looked at him steadily. "I know you are," he said, voice low but clear, "and that's exactly why you should act like one." Trump blinked, caught between anger and disbelief. "What's that supposed to mean?" Obama leaned forward just a little. "It means stop turning everything into a fight. Stop dragging people through the mud just to make yourself feel taller." He paused, his tone firm but not loud. "You brought up my birth certificate again, Donald." After all these years, Trump crossed his arms. "People have a right to ask questions." Obama nodded slowly. "They do, but you didn't ask questions, Donald. You started rumors. You built a stage on lies and made the country watch. And now you're doing the same thing again. Only the target keeps changing." Trump opened his mouth, but Obama didn't let him speak. He continued, "You've twisted the truth so often that even the people who once believed in you are starting to wonder what's real anymore." That hit hard. Trump's fingers drummed on the desk. He needed to push back, but his usual weapons, mockery, deflection, noise, didn't work here. Obama straightened his tie slightly, then said something that made the room's energy shift again. "You mentioned my background earlier," he said quietly. "But maybe you should remember. People haven't forgotten about yours either." Trump's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Obama's expression didn't change. "I'm talking about the people closest to you, about how the choices you make affect them." Then came the words that made everyone in the room hold their breath, especially your daughter, Ivanka. Trump stiffened. His whole body went still. "Leave her out of this," he said immediately, his tone sharp and defensive. But Obama didn't back down. "I wish I could," he replied calmly. "But you brought her in long before I ever mentioned her name. You gave her a desk in the White House. You let her make calls that change policy. She's not just your daughter. She's part of your administration." Trump shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. "You don't get to talk about my family." Obama leaned forward slightly. His voice was still soft, but there was something unmistakably powerful behind it. "Donald, I don't want to talk about your family. I want to talk about responsibility. Because when you bring family into power, their actions and your words about them become part of the story." Trump frowned, clearly not understanding where Obama was heading, and then Obama delivered the line that hit like thunder. "You remember what you said about her once on television?" Trump's face turned red. "That was years ago." Obama nodded. "It was. But words don't just disappear, Donald. They stay. People remember." His eyes didn't leave Trump's. "They remember when you said, 'If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.'" The room went dead silent. Trump's aides looked away, pretending not to have heard. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Obama let the words hang there. No follow-up, no explanation, just silence. It was the kind of silence that forces reflection, the kind that makes a man face his own echo. Trump's voice finally broke through, shaky, but loud. "That's not what I meant. It was a joke. You're twisting my words." Obama didn't react. He didn't smirk or gloat. He simply said, "That's what you always say." Every time the truth gets uncomfortable, it's a joke. Every time facts surface, it's someone else's fault. Trump's hands clenched into fists. "You think you're perfect? You think you can come in here and lecture me?" "No," Obama said quietly. "I'm not perfect, but I learned something in that chair you're sitting in. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about owning your words before they own you." Trump fell silent. He looked like he wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Obama stood up slowly. The movement was calm, deliberate. He buttoned his jacket, his eyes never leaving Trump's. "I came here for a discussion about the country," he said. But instead, I got the same circus you've been running since day one. Trump stood too, almost as if his pride forced him to. He extended a hand across the table. "Let's just move on," he muttered. Obama looked at the hand for a long second, then he shook his head gently. "Moving on doesn't mean pretending nothing happened," he said softly. "It means learning something from it. I hope someday you do." And with that he turned and walked toward the door. No raised voice, no dramatic exit, just quiet steps echoing through the most powerful office in the world. As he reached the doorway, Obama paused for a moment. Without looking back, he said, "The truth doesn't need permission to exist, Donald. It just does." Then he left. The door closed behind him with a dull click that sounded louder than any argument. Trump stood there frozen, his outstretched hand still in the air. The room once filled with energy and tension now felt cold and still. For the first time that day, Trump didn't have a comeback. And maybe deep down he knew he had lost this round. Not to a man's title, but to his truth. The heavy door of the Oval Office closed with a quiet click, but that sound echoed through the White House like a bell. For a moment, no one moved. The aides standing along the wall exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should follow, speak, or just disappear. Trump remained still behind his desk, his hands still halfway extended, fingers slowly curling back into a fist. His face was flushed, his breathing uneven. But his eyes told a different story. For the first time that day, there wasn't anger behind them. There was confusion, and maybe deep down something that looked a lot like doubt. He lowered himself back into the chair, staring at the desk for a long moment. The room that had once felt like his stage now felt smaller, quieter, as if Obama's calm had somehow drained all the noise from it. A single sentence lingered in the air like smoke. "The truth doesn't need permission to exist." Trump looked toward the window where the late afternoon sun had started to fade. Outside, the American flag fluttered in the wind. For a split second, he looked almost reflective. Almost. Then his expression hardened again. "Get me my schedule," he muttered to his aide. But even as he spoke, his voice lacked its usual bite. The meeting that was supposed to humiliate Barack Obama had ended in silence, and that silence said everything. Meanwhile, down the hall, Obama walked with steady steps, each one echoing softly against the polished floor. Secret Service agents followed a respectful distance behind, but no one said a word. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look smug. He looked tired, but peaceful, like a man who had done what needed to be done and didn't need to say another word about it. As he reached the main corridor, one of the staffers waiting by the door nervously asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Obama smiled faintly. "I'm fine," he said, "but I hope the country will be too." Those words carried a quiet weight, the kind of line that sticks in your head long after you hear it. He stepped outside into the evening air. The sky was painted in golden orange, the kind of light that feels almost symbolic. It was peaceful in a way that the White House hadn't been just minutes earlier. Obama stopped for a second, looking up at the flag above him. He didn't say anything, but his expression said it all. Pride, patience, and a kind of sadness that only comes from loving something enough to be disappointed by it. He knew the conversation inside that office wasn't just about him. It was about truth, about leadership, about what happens when power forgets its purpose. He took a deep breath, and for a brief moment, you could almost imagine what was running through his mind. How leadership had changed, how politics had turned into performance, how truth, simple, honest truth, had become something people now argued over. He knew people would hear about that meeting one way or another. Maybe some would twist it, maybe some would deny it happened. But that didn't matter to him because the truth doesn't depend on who believes it. It just is. Later that evening, in a quiet interview setting, Obama was asked about leadership. Without any mention of the meeting, he smiled that calm, knowing smile and said, "Leadership isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the one who listens when no one else wants to. The interviewer nodded slowly, waiting, as Obama continued. It's easy to throw insults, he said softly. It's easy to spread rumors, but it takes strength to stay calm when others lose control. Real strength doesn't come from shouting. It comes from standing on truth, especially when it's hard. He leaned back, his tone reflective, almost like a teacher passing down a lesson. When I was in office, I made mistakes. I own them because that's what the job demands, honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Then after a short pause, he added, integrity isn't about how you act when the cameras are on. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Those words hung in the air. Simple, clear, powerful, and somewhere in that truth was the heart of the moment that had unfolded earlier that day. Obama didn't win by shouting. He didn't need to. He had let truth do the talking, and it had spoken louder than anything else could. As the night settled over Washington, the lights in the White House glowed softly against the dark sky. Inside, Trump's team was already trying to move past what had happened, pretending it had been just a meeting. But those who had been in the room that day would remember it differently. They'd remember the silence after Obama's words. They'd remember the way Trump's hand hung in the air unanswered. And they'd remember the calm that followed. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard because that's what truth does. It doesn't roar. It resonates. In his private reflection later that night, Obama was said to have written a single sentence in his notebook. It read, "Power fades, truth doesn't." That's what he had tried to show, not just to Trump, but to anyone watching. That leadership isn't about humiliation or pride. It's about humility. It's about standing your ground without lowering yourself. And that's how he left the White House that evening without needing applause, cameras, or headlines. He had come face to face with noise and answered it with quiet strength. In the end, that's what made his comeback unforgettable. Not because he shouted louder, but because he stood taller. And as the story closes, one question remains. What does leadership really mean to you? Is it power, popularity, control, or is it honesty even when no one's watching? Because as Obama showed that day in the White House, truth doesn't need to fight. It just needs to stand.